Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make a forged feather. Here's what you're going to need. A piece of angle iron. This one is about 1 by 1 and it is approximately 16 thick. The actual size of angle iron you use really just depends on how big of a feather you want to make. I've got this stuff on hand, so that's what I'm going with today. Plus I like the size of it. It makes a nice feather that fits in the hand. And then you need a hot cut chisel. I've got actually two here. This one's just a regular old handheld chisel, and then this one's a handled hot cut. This one is not necessary, but I like to use it for cutting off the angles for the feather. It's a little bit wider, as you can obviously tell, and it just keeps my hands a little farther from the work while it's hot. And then I also recommend a cutting plate. This just protects your anvil from these chisels when you're cutting, because in this project you are going to be cutting all the way through. And of course you can do the cuts with an angle grinder if you need to, if you don't have these chisels, but this is a blacksmithing channel, not an angle grinding channel, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do it with these chisels. So I'm going to go ahead and get the fire going, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
I start by flattening out the angle iron. I do this in 2 heats here because this piece is a bit too long to fit all the way into my forge for a single heat. And here you can see the center ridge that I mentioned. This is why you want to use angle iron for this project. You could forge that ridge into a piece of flat bar, but it would add a lot of extra work. If you use angle iron, it just comes out naturally. Now I'm going to take the hot cut and cut off both corners from one end of the piece. This end will become the tip of the feather, and I like to cut my feathers at a little more than a 45-degree angle, but you can just go with whatever angle looks good to you. Change it up for different types of feathers. And now for the other end of the feather, we want to start by making cuts on either side of that central ridge. I'm cutting about 2.5 inches up on this one, but how far up you cut depends on the size of the feather and what you're planning on doing with it. And once I have those straight cuts, I go at an angle to start the wider part of the feather. On a real feather, this is known as the barb. And these cuts should be about the same angle as the cuts we made up on the tip of the feather. here we pause to appreciate the fact that it's actually starting to look like a feather. Now, after cutting it off, I'm going to take the feather over to the vise and file down the edges just a little bit. When using the hot cut, it can leave a little bit of a rag there on the edge, and I just don't want that forming into a cold shut as I start to forge down the quill. So I'm just going to file off both sides just to clean it up a little bit. And now back to the anvil, just to clean up that quill a little bit. I like to make mine kind of nice and round, just so that it matches what a real feather would look like a little bit more. And now here's the fun part. I'm going to take the smaller chisel and working my way up the feather, I'm going to chisel in the veins. I like to start working my way up on one side and then the other, just creating a nice uniform, even depth spacing and angle so I can establish a good base to work off of. Then I'll come back through and add a bunch of extra chisel marks with varying depth, adjust the angle a little bit and change the spacing. It just gives the feather a little more natural appearance if it's not perfectly even and perfectly spaced all the way up. And there you can see in the background, the quality control department decided to come out and visit me today while I was making this feather.
Turn that around. That is how you make a hand-forged angle iron feather.